for education to local school districts, and the local school districts will decide how it flows in many ways to local schools. The old system was based in part on going back to 1972, where districts got what were called revenue limits. It was also based on what was done after Proposition 13, where the districts were cut after the proposition limiting property taxes. So the system then built up from 1979 on as an historical accretion. It was like a bad wheel that we kept putting patches on. It ended up with no underlying rationale for why districts got different amounts of funding. It was not designed to meet specific pupil needs, for example, English learners or low income. When you look at the distributions, it was pretty much a flat grant in many ways. And finally, it was festooned with 40 to 50 categorical programs that restricted how school districts spent money and really restricted their flexibility. So it really, in the end, I think one of the reasons this passed is nobody could defend the current system, and nobody wanted to defend the current system.
Well, with that as the framework, I just want to now jump to the Department of Finance and Michael Cohen and any of his colleagues who want to jump in on this. Obviously, the school finance system is enormously complicated. Let me just start off. Will this system be clearer and simpler and more transparent than the old system? And maybe you could just give us what are the three pillars of this new system? And then the issue of winners and losers. I know this is an issue that was really hotly debated in the last year and a half. Do all districts come out ahead now, or will there be some who will be left behind or feel they'll be left behind?
Sure. So, hi, everyone. This is Michael Cohen at the Department of Finance. In terms of is this going to be a simpler system, the answer is a definite yes. We're moving from a system where we had dozens of categorical programs, each with its own set of rules and restrictions on how funding can be used, with a real emphasis on accounting for every dollar and making sure you jump through all of the right hoops. And now we're going to a unified stream of money that is the most flexible that California has ever seen in terms of allowing districts to basically choose what the highest and best use of the dollars are, and that combined with a strong accountability system so that the voters in individual school districts as well as every county and the state can keep track of how school districts are doing and provide the necessary assistance to help those that aren't showing the level of improvement that we're expecting. For those of you who've been following this issue since the governor proposed this a year and a half ago, basic principles underlying the formula and the allocation of dollars is very, very similar to what we've been talking about. There's obviously been adjustments as we've gone through the process, but the system basically has a base grant, a supplemental grant, and a concentration grant. So the base grant goes to every district on a per pupil basis, based on average daily attendance, and every student gets funding under that piece of the formula. The second piece is the supplemental, and that is basically going for every student within a district who's an English language learner, low income, or a foster youth. And the third piece is the concentration grant. Basically, once a district gets a certain concentration of those targeted populations, the English learners, the low income, and the foster youth, there's additional money provided for them. And the reason for the concentration grant is really based in the research that Mike mentioned in terms of that these students empirically require additional funding to get improved academic success. And so The notion being that as the district continues to have a higher concentration of these targeted populations, they're going to need more and more money. And so the formula with the three pieces really works on a sliding scale, so that as you add additional students within these targeted populations, you're going to get increasing dollars of money. And so overall, the system is working towards putting the most dollars where we have argued are most needed.
And Michael, can I just ask you, what is the base level now? What was reached? What was the agreement that was reached last week? For people who want to know, what is the base now, or what will the base
Sure.
be?
The base grant's now at $7,643 on average across the state. There's that includes both on the K-3 side and in high school, slight adjustments for those grades because of the higher cost of class size reduction on the lower grades and the extra cost of career technical education on the higher grades. But on average, it's $76.43, which, if compared to today's average revenue limit, you're talking about over $2,000 more than the average revenue limit.
And when does that kick in? Does that kick in this coming year? Is that when does that money actually go to the district?
Sure. The entire formula gets implemented over an 8-year period, and so we have the targeted, base grant amount, and you sort of build up to those over an 8-year period. This first year of implementation, we've got $2.1 billion in the budget dedicated to the implementation of the formula.
And then what about could you just address the winners and losers issue?
Sure. Whenever you're talking about changes in formulas, particularly those that involve billions of dollars, people obviously under today's system, some really like today's system because they do well under it, others not so much. But we're using new dollars that are possible under Proposition 30, which the voters passed in November, to really take care of the issue of winners and losers, that we're using new dollars and building up as we reinvest in the education system. But it was one of the concerns of the legislature as we went through the process, and so there's a what's now called an economic recovery target to basically ensure that the vast majority of districts are getting back to their pre-recession level. There are some extreme outliers that for historical reasons got vastly more per student than other districts in the state, and basically that top 5% aren't protected. But in this first year, no one will get less money than they got in the current fiscal year, and going forward, the vast majority of districts will get back to their pre-recession plus inflation levels.
So to clarify, you're saying nobody will get less this coming fall than they got last year, or during the past school year, on the base grant?
On their...
Yeah, total. Sorry, this is Nick Schweitzer with Department of Finance. Yes, in base grants, categorical programs, no one will get less in total dollar value, with some adjustments for ADA, or the enrollment declines or growth. But no one will get less. Everyone grows.
Okay, well, I'm sure there'll be some follow-up questions to that, but I just wanted now just to go back to Mike Kirst to address Mike Kirst, President of the State Board of Education, the issue of accountability. How does one ensure that these funds will be spent in the ways that they were intended and in the ways that you had in mind when you and your colleagues, Goodwin Liu and Alan Burson, wrote about this 5 years ago? And what is the state board's role in moving that process along?
Well, first of all, the new finance program is named Local Control Finance Program because it really returns a lot of state control to local control. And so our objective when we wrote the paper in 2008 really is well summed up by local control flexibility formula, which is what came out of the legislature. We felt that the state was way over controlling what locals were able to do. And in 2006, the last time we had any money under Governor Schwarzenegger, the governor and the legislature added 22 new categorical programs to already a complex base. So it had become too centralized, inflexible, and hardly anybody could understand it except a few highly paid consultants in Sacramento. So that one thing was to then return more decision-making to the local level. That means for the people on the call today that a lot of the accountability will not be stage managed by the specifications in the law in Sacramento. People are going to have to get active at their local level to make this really effective for their local needs. Now, as the program proceeded through the legislature, concerns rose about three things that the state board will work on, and I'll mention those in a minute. And essentially, the legislature, I believe, wisely decided that they could not, in the last week or so of the session, or even the last few days, specify all the things that local districts need to do, and of course, we didn't want a lot of specification. So they essentially said, here's some parameters you must work from, and the state board then will decide on three major areas. One, what will be the precise system the state will require to provide transparency about where the money is going once it leaves the state, goes to the district, and where it goes when it goes from the district to the schools. So the district to the school issue is, does the money reach, and the law says proportionality is the key. Does the money reach low-income English learners and foster youth kids in a proportional way? So we're going to be working on that as soon as possible. Changes in audits will need to be made so the public knows. Second area is that the budget control language had a requirement for a local education plan on funding. And so rather than looking at all these different categorical programs, the district would sit down, look at where it's spending its money now, look at and prepare a local education plan for where it is going to spend the money in the future. And they must hold public hearing on this and have participation of parental groups. The state board is left to define the template, if you will, of what needs to be in that local educational plan. And lastly, the legislature approved a number of accountability procedures about, well, if we're getting out of telling districts how to spend their money, then we need to keep track of what the pupils are learning and what kinds of outcomes there are, like college preparation and, for example, student attendance and things of that sort. So the board will then be laying out what we're calling a rubric for looking at the outcomes for pupils from this local control funding formula. So there's a lot of work to be done, and one of our deadlines is at January 2014, and then another deadline is that's for the local plan, and then the deadline goes later in 2014 for the accountability rubric.
Okay. Well, thank you, Michael Kirst. I now want to go to Jonathan Kaplan from the California Budget Project. The California Budget Project has for many years been looking at issues of poverty and how people at the bottom of the economic ladder can be better served in California. Now, this plan does direct more funds to low-income kids, to English learners and foster care. Jonathan, do you think this plan will achieve some of the things that the California Budget Project has been working on for so many years?
Well, thanks, Louis, and first thanks to New American Media and EdSource for co-hosting this timely discussion. Yes, to answer your question, the local control funding formula is a major step forward, and as Michael Cohen and Mike Kearse both said, it makes the state's education finance system more rational and easier to understand. The key piece is that it aligns state law with the fact that it costs more to educate disadvantaged students. And in the end, the preservation of concentration grants was a win for English learners and low-income students statewide. Now that those grants are part of state law, we can continue the policy discussion as to the appropriate level of funding for these grants. Ultimately, this is really a discussion about making sure that disadvantaged students have the same opportunities as those with greater resources. While policymakers deserve credit for preserving those concentration grants despite attempts to eliminate them, the compromise means that a smaller share of local control funding formula dollars will be allocated specifically for disadvantaged students compared to the original proposal the governor put forth in January. The compromise shifted dollars allocated for disadvantaged students that were in the supplemental and concentration grants to fund base grants for all school districts statewide. And so by boosting those base grants, the compromise also increased the total cost of the formula, the total cost for implementing it, which is going to lengthen the time it takes to fully implement it. That could perpetuate current funding inequities during the transition. So we're definitely looking to see what it is that happens in terms of overall funding provided to the formula over time. Another key question that remains is one that Michael Kearse has outlined pretty well, is whether the formula will ensure equity in school funding. It's going to be critical that school districts are held accountable for ensuring that dollars intended for disadvantaged students are used to provide additional services for those students. How funding accountability is going to work has been the subject of intense negotiation. And as Mr. Kearse said, many of these key decisions have been deferred to the state board, and they're important decisions that need to be made over the course of the next several months or years. But as Mike said, local school boards are going to have a lot more authority to spend school dollars than they have under the current system. And education stakeholders are going to need to hold them accountable if equity is to be achieved. One thing that the formula did not address, and it's a very important piece that hasn't been mentioned so far, is that this does not bring a level of adequacy to school funding statewide. The local control funding formula addresses inequities in school funding, but it was never intended to address the overall adequacy of California school funding. In other words, the local control funding formula is about dividing the school funding pie. Now the question facing California is how we can make that pie larger. A lot of the debate in the legislature over the course of the last several weeks was about restoring funding to 2007-8, which is not adequate. It's not an adequate level of funding. In fact, we've had a decade of disinvestment in California public schools, and in order to fund California schools adequately, we need as a state to think about an appropriate and adequate level of revenue statewide to provide the level of services in our schools that all Californians want.
Okay. Jonathan, I think we're going to jump to John Fenswald, and I'm sure we'll come back to this in questions, but thanks so much.
Sure.
I did have a question here that was sent in by Larry Holgan for the Chief Academic Officer for Ifton Charter Schools in San Diego. He wanted to know to what extent will public charters, but charters in general, be affected by this development. John, does this plan also extend to charter schools?
Yeah, it does. It brings the charters will get the same construct that all the other districts will get. And I know that the charter folks are doing a lot of calculations, and I've asked for the figures, and they're in the middle of doing it. But I think you can say this, particularly the charters like Aspire and Rocket Ship and Summit and KIPP that have educated low-income and really target their schools to low-income and English learners will do far better because they'll be getting the supplemental grant that all disadvantaged students, high-need students will get. The thing that charters will be unhappy about is that if you're a charter and you serve, say, 90% of these high needs students, and you're in a district that where the average high needs students are, say, 50%, you won't qualify for a concentration grant. And so even though you as a school serve 90% of these students, you won't be getting that extra money, but you will be getting the supplemental money. So I think there's a difference there that has made the charters unhappy from day one, and that still stands.
Okay, well, thank you, John Fensterwald. We're now going to open up the lines to questions from the media. I think, Lindsay, do you have instructions?
Thank you. To ask a question, press 0 followed by a 1 on your touch-tone phone. Questions will be answered in the order they are received. If you have a question, please press 0 followed by a 1 now. Please hold for a moment as our system compiles your responses.
While we're waiting for the questions from the audience, I just wanted to ask Mike Kirst a question about how does the local control funding formula relate to Common Core, which is really, the big challenge facing school districts in the next several years. Is there a connection? And I know the governor also has proposed $1 billion plus for Common Core. What is the connection between this and Common Core?
Yes, well, our original position was that to do Common Core, we had to make and implement it locally. We had to make the system much more flexible locally so that the local school districts could invest in professional development and materials and technology and things of that sort, and that they weren't restricted to the 40 to 50 categorical programs the state had going back 30 years or more. So Common Core was always an idea behind the local flexibility. But then the governor and the legislature got together to add $1.25 billion in 2 installments to the Common Core. So we are at the state board very much interested in merging the local control funding plan with a Common Core plan. They're somewhat separate in the trailer bill language, but I think that districts ought to be thinking about Common Core as part of their overall local plan, but they will have additional dollars on top of what we have talked about so far, $1 billion next year and $250 million the year after to spend specifically on Common Core. And that's a very flexible funding source as well. And it's only for 2 years and then is not supposed to continue. So it's not a new long-term categorical program.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to some questions then.
Thank you, and we do have several questions. And our first question comes from Peter Schroes of Sacramento Bee. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. I have a question for Mike Kirst. The legislature has kicked, as you pointed out, a great many responsibilities for the details of implementing this program to the board. Does the board have the capacity, the capability to do the monitoring, to do the accountability, to do all of that stuff? Where does that come from?
Well, the board is a policy-making group, and we have the capability to make the policy. And we got some more resources to figure out the policies. But the enforcement of the whatever policy emerges will be done through the usual mechanism of the California Department of Education. So the board and the California Department have been working together, I think, very well under the Brown administration. They are the administrative arm of state government, if you will. And we're on the same page as far as I know about these issues.
Are you, Mike? Are you at all concerned about the districts? I mean, we have a number of districts. I don't know how many, which have been historically dysfunctional. They've been taken over by the state. They've gone bankrupt. Whatever. And I don't want to name them, but can those districts and districts like that really implement this new program?
Well, again, the program is, quote, a flow of resources, and so the money will flow through the Department of Education to the district. So the main part of the program in some ways is writing checks to districts, if you will. Now, you're raising additional questions that are important, and those are the things the board will be considering. There was quite a bit of trailer bill language. It's quite long, and in there is a process for the board to spell out for districts that are really showing no progress at all, and it's different from what we've had before.
And Mike, it's John Fensterwald. There is a role for counties as well, right? County offices of education. It's not all on the state Department of Education.
Yeah, and it's not, and the counties are really going to be checking on the local plans the way they check on the finances of the districts when they adopt their budgets. Their role's not huge, and it's and I think we're going to be working out the language in the trailer bill on what kind of local intervention take place from counties or the state or an independent organization. I would say I think we're shifting our focus in California from clearly negative sanctions and SWAT teams coming in and so on to trying to provide more help to districts. You'll see a different tone in the approach of intervention that has been true as compared to NCLB or what we did prior.
Okay, I'm sure people will be relieved to hear that. Can we go to the next question then?
Thank you. And our next question comes from Charlotte Bear of KQED Public Radio. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just wondered, are you getting feedback that districts all over the state are now having to go back and adjust their budgets because maybe they weren't counting on this formula passing? Now it has, so everyone's having to retool?
I'm going to Department of Finance, folks. What does this mean for districts that have already prepared their budgets?
Sure, this is Nick Schweitzer with Department of Finance. I believe most districts did plan on the formula passing. The typical budget process that happens is that county offices of education provide guidance to school districts in constructing their multi-year budget every year, and that guidance is always based on the governor's budget proposal in January and then as updated in May, and that's the guidance they gave districts. I'm quite sure a number of districts made sure that they had contingencies in place in case this didn't happen. But for the most part, districts did have the guidance and to plan on the resources becoming available next year.
Okay, let's go to the next question.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Teresa Harrington of Contra Costa Times. Please go ahead.
Hi. I was just wondering why the amount for the concentration grant was increased to 55%, and also I've heard from a local district that is at 49% that even if they get up to 55%, because it's a rolling 3-year, multi-year budget, that they have to stay at 55% for 3 years before they'll be eligible for the concentration grant. And I just wanted to find out if that's true.
And just to clarify, the concentration grant is for districts who have 55% or more high-need students, the low-income English learners and foster kids. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was raised to 55% because we did have concerns from another number of folks that 50% was not enough of a filter for high concentration, and sort of in the discussions with the legislature, we decided to or we agreed to bump it up marginally. Now it is based on a 3-year average. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be above 55% for each of those 3 years. It just means that when you average the 3 years together, you must be above the 55%. So
that was Nick Schweitzer. This is Nick Schweitzer at Department of Finance, yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
And just to add, Michael Cohen at Finance, I mean, in the district, in your example, I think it's important to remember the base grant is significantly higher than it was in the May revision, and they're also getting the supplemental grant for their low-income and English learner students. And it's really kind of whether or not they get money on the concentration grant for, a handful of students who just bump over 55%. That's not going to be where the vast majority of their funding is coming from.
Okay.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Leanne Zumi of Collaborative Strategies. Please go ahead.
Hello. I'm wondering what the rationale is for not allowing charter schools that are LEAs that have a concentration above 55% of high-need students to collect that concentration money if they're located geographically in a district that does not meet the 55%. It seems like those are the charter schools that are doing precisely what the state would want, which is serving high-need students. And I'm also wondering about the inverse. If there's a charter school geographically located in a district above the 55%, but it's not serving itself 55% or more high-need students, do they get to collect the concentration grant?
So this is a technical question, and LEA is the local school district. Yeah.
And charter schools, many charter schools are LEAs.
Yeah.
So this is Nick Schweitzer with Department of Finance. I'll take care of the second question first. That's the easiest. The answer is no. The concentration factor limitation for charters, acts as a cap. It doesn't. So a charter that's in a district with a high concentration factor, but it is itself not serving that many high-need students, would get the concentration factor based on number of students it's serving, not the number of students the district is serving. So to answer the other question, for purposes of the concentration and the formula, it was decided that that charter schools, even though for other purposes of law they're considered to be independent LEAs, but for this purpose, we felt it best to consider them to be a school, within the school district. I think, and you find.
But what is the logic?
Well, hang on. It's just we're going to make this. We need to move on to the next question. So let Nick answer the question. Thanks.
Sure. So logic being is that they should be treated kind of as part of that local school system, as opposed to as an independent school system. I think charter schools are public schools. They are intended to be part of local school systems. So we felt there was a strong rationale to treat them as such.
Okay, let's go to the next question. Thank you.
Thank you. And to ask a question, please press 0 followed by a 1 now. And our next question comes from Lisa of California. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name's Lisa Schiff. I'm a parent, and also I write a column called Schoolbeat on Beyond Con. And I had a question about the accountability strategies that the state board will be taking. I'm wondering if there will be other measures besides standardized testing involved, and what about conflicts between local groups that are working on accountability and their determination being different from what the state board determines? How will that be handled?
Well, there are many other factors than just stat scores. Indeed, the trailer bill language specifies many indicators 10 or more. So this is not a return. This is a substantial break, I should say, from the idea of an academic performance index having just test scores as the index. So on that one, I can assure you that this is a new, different thing. The second question, I'm not clear I understood exactly.
So if the local community is supposed to be playing a much greater role in terms of accountability, but what if the local community has a sense that their schools are performing in the way they expect and that their students are achieving according to their ideas and expectations, but the state board has a different understanding of those outcomes? Who gets to make the determination between those two groups?
Well, I would guess under state law, the state board would. We have so many there's so many indicators that we're going to be using that I'd be interested what your perception could be that's that different. We're going to use college-ready indicators of various types, attendance indicators, and several others. So I don't think there'd be that big a divergence, and we'd certainly be interested in, we have the right to waive things under the state board, so you could also apply for a local waiver if from the state law if you had an unusual situation.
I think that's really going to come up a lot because there are already huge disagreements between local communities and higher levels of authority about what is actually being accomplished within a given school.
Well, we'll also be, you'll have to consider that the new computer adaptive Common Core assessments are going to be very different from the existing multiple choice California standards test. This is a sea change with, in effect, each student taking his or her own assessment through a computer adaptive. So even the assessment argument, I think, will be shifted, and we'd be better to wait and see what all these changes are before we extrapolate the divergences from the past.
Okay, thank you.
This is Nick Schweitzer with Department of Finance. I also want to point out that, accountability really under this construct starts out as a local process. It starts out with the local plans and communities setting goals around the state priority areas and any additional areas they think are important. And then, the first level of support is provided by county offices. And then, if things are still not working out, then another organization comes in to review the process or to review the conditions going on at the school district. And at any point in this process, either the county or the review organization or ultimately the state board itself can look at the district and look at what the community is seeing and decide that they don't need to intervene in a district. So there is a emphasis on local control, local decision making, local accountability first, and then it's more of a what happens if things are not working out over an extended period of time, and multiple other things are attempted before you get a stronger sort of state intervention.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Mike Harris of Mountain News. Please go ahead.
Because the state has chosen to defer payments or a portion of payments to school districts over the years, a lot of districts have had to borrow money, and it's my understanding with their own district that they are not being reimbursed for the cost of borrowing money. Is there any plan to help districts get reimbursed for the cost of borrowing money because the state basically held back payments?
So this is Nick Schweitzer, Department of Finance. We believe the best thing to do, rather than keeping on deferring money and trying to pay districts for the cost of borrowing, is just to stop deferring money. And so that's where we're putting our money towards in the current year, last year, this year, and going forward. to pay off those deferrals as soon as possible. Because there are, the deferrals are not just they're a burden in ways beyond the cost of borrowing to districts. So we'd rather put that money towards not deferring the money anymore, as opposed to trying to pay interest costs on the deferrals.
And we've already, with this budget, we'll have paid off 40% of the outstanding deferral amounts, and we have a multi-year plan. So within a couple more years, all of the deferrals will be paid off. Our plan is to basically, of the new money that's available to schools, use half of it to pay off deferrals.
And who is this talking?
That was Michael Cohen.
Michael Cohen, thank you. Okay, thank you. I wanted to just address a quick question to Jonathan Cohen from the California Budget Project. What does this plan do? This question came in over the transom here. What does this do to the local control funding formula due to Prop 98, which has been one of the biggest complexities in the central pillar of the school financing system? Is Prop 98 still in place?
So I've always kind of liked Michael Cohen a lot and thought I'd be a great relative of his, but my last name is Kaplan, just giving you that heads up. The local control funding formula has nothing to do with changing Proposition 98. The new formula reforms how state dollars are allocated, but it does not affect the amount of funding provided for schools. So Proposition 98 is in the state constitution, and to change it requires a constitutional amendment. It's an umbrella amount of dollars, a total funding amount that goes to both K-12 schools and community colleges. The local control funding formula does not change Prop 98 in any way.
Okay. We go to the next question.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Neil Gonzalez of Philippines News. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My question is, what do you say to the more wealthy districts who argue that they would get ultimately less funding per student compared to the other districts?
Well, I think that was Mike Kirst of the state board. I think that was part of the original idea here, that it, as the governor said, giving equal amounts of money to unequal conditions of students and student needs is not a right way to go. So I think the whole idea of the supplemental grants and the concentration grants is that students who suffer from poverty, not knowing much English as they enter school and so on, cost more, and that is a major aspect of the philosophy of the whole new funding program. And so it's a matter of what we call vertical equity, meaning different amounts for different student needs, rather than horizontal equity where you just pay the same amount for each student.
And this is Jonathan Kaplan again. I'll just add that it's an important piece of the compromise that happened between the governor's original proposal and what was in the May revision, and what ultimately was passed by the legislature, that a significant amount of dollars were provided to districts that were making the exact complaint that the caller asked about. So there were significant concessions made to districts in the course of the compromise, and those concessions took monies that were dedicated to districts that serve large numbers of low-income kids.
Can I just get in a quick question then from John DePero at FICMAT? It's been raised about English learners. Is there still a 7-year time limit for funding of English learners? And the question has also come up, will there be some motivation for keeping kids categorized as English learners if they get an additional funding, supplemental funding and concentration funding for those students?
So this is Nick Schweitzer with the Department of Finance. So there is no longer a time limit on the number of years a district can receive funding for English learners. Over the course of the last couple of years, we did talk to and hear from a number of folks about this issue and about how the designation and redesignation process works at the local level. And through that process, although we initially had some concerns about what sort of incentives would be created, but we have been convinced now that it's not so great an issue. The redesignation process is something that really happens. It's between the teacher making the recommendation and what the scores are of the child on the self. So there's not that much potential for manipulation for funding purposes. It's really kind of there's a separation between where that decision is made and where funding decisions are made in local school districts. So we agreed to remove that limitation.
Okay, let's go to the next question.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Barbara Grady of Oakland Local. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My question is whether the legislature or the state education department will issue kind of broad directives on how districts should spend the extra money to help disadvantaged students, or is it completely up to them?
Sorry, did you get that question?
Secondly, I just wanted...
Yeah. Did the panelists get that question?
Yeah, Mike Kirsch from the State Board. It'll be general. We're not going to be telling districts how to educate pupils in great detail at all. And part of this whole idea of local flexible funding is to let the districts figure this out. What we will be doing is looking at the outcomes of the pupils. But I think this is a change of philosophy, that the state knows how to prescribe particular ways of educating pupils, and therefore we have to earmark funds that specify how you educate your pupils locally. So I think this is a philosophical change of looking at the outcomes and moving back from the specification of how education takes place locally in classrooms.
Thank you.
Thank you. And to ask a question, press 0 followed by a 1 now. And our next question comes from Jay Chambers of AIR. Please go ahead.
Yes, this is Jay Chambers of AIR. I just wanted to know how special education needs are going to be addressed by the LCSFF.
So this is Nick Schweitzer with the Department of Finance again. So the special education formulas we set aside from LCFF just because of the complexity of federal regulation and mandate that has all that funding really tied down. Now we have made some efforts to streamline that funding and simplify the allocations of that funding as well, but the basic structure we have left the same. However, I would also point out that the areas in which you find the highest concentration of special needs students are also those areas where you find the highest concentrations of low-income students. So to the extent the local control funding formula provides additional money to those school districts with those students, there'll be some interaction there, some overlap, and there'll be it'll make it easier for those districts to serve those students with special needs as well.
So did I understand that there's no additional funding on top of the base and the need-based adjustments for special education, or did I misunderstand?
No, there's no, aside from the existing categorical program that provides additional funding for special education, that program continues to exist.
Okay. And Can I just jump in with a quick question? We don't have too much time left, so we can make the responses brief. There have been criticisms by people who are concerned about where this money will go. There's a question here: is there anything to ensure that these additional funds won't go straight to the collective bargaining table? Anybody want to take that on?
Well, this is Jonathan Kaplan chiming in. As I stated earlier, the key question here is whether these dollars are going to be spent for the students for whom they are intended. A lot of debate was placed on this question about how, in fact, you're going to ensure that, and these questions really have been deferred to the state board in large part. So it's going to be up to Mike Hurst and the hot potatoes in his camp now to figure out how it is that we're going to ensure these dollars are spent on the students for whom they're intended. I would suggest one of the ways that it could be done is by improving, salaries for teachers to make sure that high-quality teachers are actually in the classrooms of these students. So collective bargaining might be a great place for it to exist.
And Jonathan, this is Ana Matos Santos, and sorry I'm late, and I appreciate your take, but I'd have to disagree with it. I mean, I think that the accountability structure that's set forth in the statute is consistent with the governor's approach as outlined in the State of the State, that laws should be establishing the overall principle and the clear requirement. And to that end, the accountability language is very clear that the dollars have to be spent for the primary benefit of the students. There's focus on outcomes and focus on improved outcomes not only for all students but for subpopulations, and they have to show how is it that they're going to be spending the dollars in a manner that's going to improve outcomes. But beyond that, there's also the clear proportionality requirement. And yes, the board is going to be specific about exactly how is it that the proportionality requirement is going to be implemented and how is it going to be measured and evaluated. But the law is very clear. It says that the dollars that are being provided in supplemental grants and concentration grants have to be spent to provide supplemental services to the students for which they're being provided. And the board is going to specify exactly how that is to occur, but the legal standard is very clear in the statute that the legislature has approved.
And this is Ana Matos Santos, who's, I guess, just back from the governor's office. Thank you for joining us in the last few minutes. And can I, Louis? Yes.
Louis, can I just add something? This is John Fensterwald, and separate from the I guess, disagreement between Anna and Jonathan. I just encourage for the reporters online to check this year's budget, the one that will be approved in July, and see whether what is negotiated at the bargaining table, the raises that perhaps are given this year before the regulations come out from the state board in January, see whether that is in fact in the spirit of LCFF and where that money should go.
And can I just address a question to Ana Matos Santos? Obviously, as this call shows, and I'm sure you're aware of this, there's just going to be vast numbers of questions and details that people that haven't you may not have considered, and certainly that will be coming up in the next few months. Are you setting up any special procedures anyway for people to ask questions or to get questions answered? I mean, there's 1,000 school districts across California, and probably every one of them will have a question that hasn't been answered yet.
Sure, and we've been having regular conversations through statewide associations and directly with districts, with civil rights communities, and with a whole host of different stakeholders, and we will continue to be committed to having those conversations moving forward. We'll also be working with the Department of Education and with Mike's team at the state board on the actions that are going to be taken either by the Department of Education in terms of the distribution of dollars consistent with LCFF, and Mike's team in terms of the additional work that's going to be coming out of the state board, and make sure that we're communicating with the field, answering questions, and moving forward with successful implementation of the local control funding formula that has been adopted this year.
I think we have time for just one very quick question. We have one more question.
Thank you. And our last question comes from Masharika. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. In wanting to just get complete clarity on how we're defining local in this framework, especially the local control and accountability plan, I'm curious to get the panelists' thoughts on the role that parents and the broader community will play in actually holding schools and school districts accountable to ensuring, to Jonathan's earlier point, that the dollars are going to the students who need the resources, which, quite frankly, are all of our children. But what is the role of parents? Will there be a new definition? What districts must do to demonstrate parental involvement in this process?
I mean, I think the accountability language is clear about what parental involvement and community involvement in development of the plans and carrying out the work here is an important state priority. There's both generally making sure that the plans are being adopted in a public process, that there is a process of consulting with parents, as well as the survey requirement that got built in, right, Nick?
Right. Right.
And are you still relying on school site councils and English learner advisory committees to be the hub for these conversations to take place, or are you envisioning new governance structures to ensure that parental involvement is occurring on a site-by-site basis?
This is Nick Schweitzer with Department of Finance. I mean, we do have in the language requirements for school districts to consult with and respond to district level parent advisory committee and the district level English learner advisory committee. Certainly we put as a state priority area that districts should set goals around enhancing parent engagement. So we'd expect that districts would go beyond that in terms of constructing their plans and setting goals and administering the programs at the local level. As Anna mentioned, we've also built in school climate surveys and things like that take input from parents and students as well, and the local conditions at school sites, and set goals around improving those conditions and parents' ability to be part of the education of their children at those sites. As well, I think throughout the local planning process, the language is pretty clear that a broad range of groups, including parents, should be consulted, and the process should be very transparent, and they should have plenty of opportunity to engage in the process.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and we certainly hope that the accountability measures would work better than they did when Prop 98 was passed in the school accountability report card, which I know the state board has been looking at, has not been that effective in terms of accountability. But I just wanted to thank all the presenters, Mike Kurz from the State Board of Education, Anna Matasantos and her colleagues, Jonathan Kaplan at the California Budget Project, and an MP3 recording of this call will be available. You can go to New America Media for details as to that if you want to go back and listen or share with your colleagues. I'd also encourage all of you who didn't get your questions answered you could send us questions at edsource.org, and we'll forward them to the Department of Finance and to the Board of Education, but I'm sure that this will be instructive to them to see what questions you have that haven't been answered. So I also want to thank New American Media for co-sponsoring this with EdSource. And one final word, EdSource was founded in 1977, right after the Serrano versus Priest decision to explain to Californians the complexities of the school finance system. And so obviously, 36 years later, we haven't solved all the problems of school finance, but this plan hopefully will be less complex than what we've had. So thank you very much, and we look forward to continuing the discussion with all of you.
Thank you all for your attention. This concludes today's conference call.
Ooh, what was that? Interesting, right? Let's listen to some more interesting stuff.
The first time I heard the term developmental monitoring, I was really intimidated and thought, this sounds really complicated and time-consuming. How am I going to do that on top of everything else I have to do during the day? I was so relieved when I found out that developmental monitoring is just a fancy way of saying, watch, observe, and record what the kids are doing to make sure they're on track. I just mark on a simple checklist when children meet milestones. We observe children every day anyway. We watch what they're doing when they play in the classroom or outside, when they eat, and so on. Monitoring is just that, watching and observing and recording what you see. Making a check on a list when a child meets a milestone takes about 2 seconds, and it's easier than just about anything else we do all day. It's definitely easier than getting a room full of toddlers to sleep at nap time, and it's a lot more fun than changing diapers. And if that's all it takes to really make sure each child is on track and to make sure I'm not missing anything in all the hubbub each day, I'm all over it. So this may sound really surprising, but I like tracking milestones. I think it's fun, and everything about it fascinates me. The personalities of the children in my class are always so different, but for the most part, they meet their milestones about the same time. But the order in which they meet them can be so different. Keeping up with what each child is doing and knowing what each child still needs to learn is really easy. In the next section, you're going to learn about some materials from Learn the Signs, Act Early, the program I mentioned earlier. I used the materials for different purposes. For tracking milestones, when I first started teaching, I thought I knew all about developmental milestones. I knew they were the different things children were supposed to do at particular ages, like walk, crawl, and talk. I thought I knew them all, but I really only knew a few, and I'm not sure I even had those at the right ages. Anyway, it's really helped me understand milestones better since I learned the phrase play, learn, speak, act, and move. Now I use milestone checklists to keep up with each child's progress, but I'll tell you more about that later. As I watch my little ones, I ask myself if they are all pretty similar in their ability to play, learn, speak, act, and move. If anything or anyone stands out, I pay special attention. I also use the checklist to think about what kinds of things my little ones should be doing next. For example, if a child in my classroom is 9 months old and is pointing at things, then I can look on my 12-month checklist and expect that soon she will be using simple gestures like shaking her head for no or waving bye-bye. I share this information with families so they'll know what to look for next too. I still remember how surprised I was to find out how many of a child's behaviors are related to their milestones. I'd never really thought about how a baby putting things in his mouth, or knocking his bowl off the table, or a toddler saying no, or a preschooler worrying about monsters under the bed are all milestones. And you know how young toddlers will dump containers of objects and then are perfectly happy to put the objects back into the container? That's another milestone. A child dumping blocks at this age is a cognitive milestone. Now take a look at him sorting shapes, which also demonstrates cognitive skills. Having developmentally appropriate toys in the classroom can help children reach their milestones. Because children will be at varying places in their milestone journey, a variety of toys for different developmental levels can help keep everyone busy and challenged.
Implementing a hand hygiene program that's rooted in the 4 E's: engage, educate, execute, and evaluate is a great way to get your healthcare facility on the path to continuous quality improvement. In this second video of our 4-part series, we'll cover another essential facet of an effective program: educating your healthcare personnel. When healthcare personnel clean their hands the right way at the right time, they have a direct impact on the health and well-being of those receiving their care. It is important that healthcare personnel have training so that they recognize times when hands should be cleaned and that they always clean their hands thoroughly. The hands of healthcare personnel should be free from redness, cracking, or wounds, and they should have short, natural nails. Fingernails should not extend beyond the fingertip. Some healthcare personnel, like those that scrub for surgical procedures, should not wear fingernail polish. If polish is permitted, it should not be chipped or flaking. Hands should be cleaned immediately before touching a patient. Before performing an aseptic task, like inserting a catheter or handling invasive medical devices.
All right, guys, I'm sorry to interrupt your lunch. We want to just keep moving so that we can end in a reasonable time. My name is Bergen. I'm a pediatrician at UCLA, a general pediatrician. I'm not a developmental behavioral pediatrician, so that's like my first disclaimer. And I have 3 other apologies for you up front. So one apology is that these talks that you're about to hear, basically from now on, are things that we've already done at previous trainings. So if you've already seen them, or you already know this stuff, you can come help teach it, you can leave, I won't take it personally. Second is that in the middle section, I'm gonna go through some information that in about 45 minutes that used to be 3 hours. So it's like 3 sessions that I've condensed down into one. And so it's a lot of information that's gonna be kind of rushed. Again, it's all stuff that we've done in the past, but if you have questions, please stop me, please slow us down. We may not get through everything, but we can, go through more detail if you need it. So please just let it be interactive. Feel free to raise your hands. And then the third apology is that we were gonna have these screening tool session workshops, and Paul Chung was gonna do one of our sessions, but he had to leave because his daughter is sick. And so we're gonna sort of improvise and have 3 instead of 4. And so Rebecca Dedovitz, who's brilliant and awesome, is kindly volunteered to do the work that Paul was going to do. So she's going to have a little bit of extra stuff. So, and also, the other thing I was going to say, Pam knows the developmental screening, the general developmental screening I was going to do with the people.
Next week, that other week, because the lady needs to first come and address you.
Every time this mother and her 2 children tried to get home, they had to cross this dangerous ditch. Some boy
doing with the 3 to 6 year olds. Let me wait for them. Right, those who are coming.
Let me be honest with you right from the start. Within the next 60 minutes, something inside you is going to shift. Not because I have some magic formula, but because you're about to understand yourself in a way most people never do. You're going to discover why your words sometimes feel stuck, why your voice shakes when it matters most, and, more importantly, how to change all of that starting today. Here's something that might surprise you. The people you admire for their speaking ability, the ones who walk into rooms and command attention without trying, they weren't born that way. Not a single one of them. They learned. They practiced. They stumbled and got back up. And that's exactly what you're going to do, except you're going to do it faster, because you have a roadmap they never had. Most of us go through life using maybe 10% of our communication potential. We trip over our thoughts during job interviews. We rehearse conversations in our heads for hours, and then forget everything the moment we open our mouths. We watch someone else articulate the exact idea we had, and we wonder why we couldn't find those words ourselves. Sound familiar? I thought so, because that used to be me, too. But here's the beautiful part. Communication isn't some genetic gift handed down to a chosen few. It's a skill, like cooking, like learning an instrument, like anything else worth doing. And skills can be learned by anyone willing to show up and do the work. That person is you. I already know that because you're still here reading this. By the time we're done together, you'll understand the invisible forces working inside your brain every time you speak. You'll know how to quiet that critical voice that tells you you're not smart enough, not eloquent enough, not worthy enough to be heard. You'll have practical tools for controlling your voice, reading a room, handling tough conversations, and connecting with anyone, anywhere, anytime. This isn't theory. This is your transformation. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's begin this journey together. Chapter 1. What's really happening inside your brain when you speak? Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're standing in front of a group of people at work. Maybe it's a team meeting. Maybe it's a presentation. Your palms are sweating. Your mind goes blank. The words that were so clear in your head 5 minutes ago have completely evaporated. You manage to say something, but it comes out tangled and rushed. Afterward, you replay the moment over and over, cringing at every stumble. Now here's the thing most people don't realize. That experience has almost nothing to do with your intelligence or your vocabulary. It has everything to do with your brain chemistry. When you perceive a situation as threatening, and yes, your brain treats a boardroom presentation with the same urgency as encountering a wild animal on a hiking trail, your nervous system hits the panic button. Stress. Hormones flood your bloodstream like a dam breaking open. Cortisol, adrenaline. These chemicals are brilliant for running away from physical danger, but for delivering a coherent sentence, they're absolutely terrible. Your working memory, that mental workspace where you organize thoughts and select words, essentially shrinks. Imagine trying to cook a 5-course meal on a cutting board the size of a postcard. That's what your brain is working with when fear takes over. Your vocabulary contracts. Complex ideas become impossible to articulate, and you're left standing there, wondering what happened to the person who was so prepared 5 minutes ago. But wait, before you think this means you're doomed, let me share something that changed everything for me. Confident speakers experience the exact same chemical response. Their hearts race too. Their palms get clammy too. The difference isn't that they don't feel fear. The difference is they've trained their minds to interpret that fear differently. Think of it like surfing. The wave is coming whether you want it to or not. A beginner sees the wave and panics. A skilled surfer sees the same wave and thinks, "Here we go." Same wave. Completely different outcome based on interpretation. That's exactly what happens with communication anxiety. You can learn to ride the wave instead of being crushed by it. Your brain processes communication on 3 distinct levels. And understanding these levels is like being handed the keys to a car you've been trying to push uphill. The first level is reactive processing. This is autopilot. Someone asks you a question and you blurt out the first thing that comes to mind. No filter, no strategy, just raw, unprocessed reaction. Most casual conversations happen here, and it's fine for chatting with friends about weekend plans. But for anything that actually matters, reactive processing will let you down. The second level is intentional processing. This is where you start choosing your words consciously. You think before you speak. You consider how something might sound before you say it. You edit in real time. It requires more mental energy, but the quality of your communication jumps dramatically. The third level is strategic processing. This is where the masters operate. At this level, you're simultaneously aware of 3 things: your message, your audience's reaction, and the direction you want the conversation to go. You're not just speaking, you're orchestrating an experience. And before you think that sounds manipulative, let me reframe it. Strategic communication is about being so present and so aware that you can serve your audience better. It's about making sure your ideas actually land the way you intend them to. That's not manipulation. That's respect for the people listening to you. Your brain also has a fascinating built-in filter called the reticular activating system. Think of it like a personal algorithm, similar to the one that decides what shows up on your social media feed. It highlights whatever you've trained it to focus on. If you've spent years telling yourself you're a terrible speaker, that algorithm surfaces every fumble, every awkward pause, every moment where you wish you'd said something differently. It's confirmation bias running on autopilot. But here's the exciting flip side. When you start feeding that algorithm new data, when you begin believing you're becoming a better communicator, the whole feed changes. Suddenly, you notice the moments when you explained something clearly. You catch yourself making a great point in a meeting. You remember the time someone told you that you really nailed an explanation. Same person, same brain, different algorithm. The neuroscience goes even deeper. When you speak, something remarkable happens in the brains of the people listening to you. Their mirror neurons fire as though they were speaking your words themselves. This means your emotional state is literally contagious. When you speak with warmth and certainty, the people listening physically experience that warmth and certainty in their own bodies. When you speak with confusion and doubt, they catch that too, like a cold spreading through an office. This is why preparation matters so much more than most people realize. It's not about memorizing lines. It's about knowing your material so deeply that your brain can focus on connection instead of content generation. When you're not scrambling to remember what comes next, you can pour all that mental energy into how you deliver your message. You move from hoping you'll find the right words to deliberately choosing them. That shift changes everything. There's one more concept I want you to carry with you. Cognitive load theory. Your brain has a limited amount of processing power at any given moment. Think of it like the battery on your phone. When you have 20 apps running in the background, everything slows down and the battery drains fast. When you're simultaneously trying to remember what to say, figure out how to say it, monitor whether you're making sense, and read the room for reactions, your mental battery is at 1%. This is exactly why nervous speakers lose their train of thought mid-sentence, or suddenly can't find a word they use every single day. Their mental processing is maxed out. Skilled communicators solve this by automating certain parts of their delivery. They develop go-to transition phrases. They have practiced ways of explaining their core ideas. They've built mental frameworks for organizing thoughts quickly. All of this frees up precious resources for the things that really matter. Connecting with people, reading the room, and adjusting in real time. Understanding these principles isn't just interesting science. It's the foundation everything else is built on. When you know exactly why your brain sometimes betrays you in important moments, you can stop blaming yourself and start building systems that actually work. Chapter 2: Taming the Voice Inside Your Head. Here's something nobody talks about enough. Long before you open your mouth to speak, there's already a conversation happening. It's the conversation between you and you. That running monologue inside your skull that never seems to take a break. And honestly, for most people, that inner voice is not a very kind roommate. Right now, as you're absorbing these ideas, that voice is active. Maybe it's saying, "This is actually helpful. I should try this." Or maybe it's whispering, "Sounds nice in theory, but I could never pull this off." Whatever it's saying, I want you to know something important. That voice is not telling you the truth. It's telling you a story, and stories can be rewritten. The inner voice of someone who communicates with confidence sounds fundamentally different from the inner voice of someone who dreads speaking up. Picture two people about to walk into the same job interview. Person A's inner voice says, "They're going to see right through me. I'm going to freeze up and everyone will know I don't belong here." Person B's inner voice says, "I've prepared well and I have real experience to share. Let's see how I can show them what I bring to the table." Same interview, same hiring panel, completely different internal experiences. And here's the part that really matters. Those different internal experiences create different external realities. Because your inner dialogue doesn't just affect how you feel, it shapes your posture, your eye contact, your vocal tone, even the words you reach for. It's a waterfall. The thought creates the feeling shapes the body shapes the delivery shapes the outcome, and the outcome feeds back into the original thought. If you want to change what comes out of your mouth, you need to change what's happening between your ears first. Now, let me be gentle here, because I have a feeling I know where your inner voice learned its script. Maybe there was a teacher who made you feel small when you gave a wrong answer in front of the entire class. Maybe there was a parent whose corrections felt more like verdicts than lessons. Maybe classmates laughed at how you said a certain word and that laughter carved itself into your memory like initials in wet concrete. These experiences didn't just hurt in the moment. They built neural highways in your brain that automatically activate every time you're about to speak in a situation that feels high stakes. But here's what fills me with hope for you. Your brain is not concrete. It's more like a river, and rivers can be redirected at any point in their journey. Neuroscience has shown us that neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to form new connections and pathways, doesn't expire. It's available to you right now at whatever age you are, in whatever circumstances you're in. Every single time you consciously choose a different thought, you're digging a new channel. You're teaching the river to flow in a new direction. The process starts with something deceptively simple: paying attention. For the next 7 days, become a curious observer of your own mind. Notice what your inner voice says before different types of conversations. Pay attention to the difference between how you talk to yourself before grabbing lunch with a close friend versus before presenting an idea to your team. You'll probably discover something eye-opening. Your inner voice doesn't use one script. It has different scripts for different situations. And the higher the stakes feel, the harsher and more fearful that script becomes. Once you can clearly see these patterns, you can begin rewriting them. Elite communicators use mental rehearsal before important moments. They close their eyes and vividly imagine themselves speaking clearly, making strong points, and connecting with their audience. They see understanding in people's eyes. They feel steadiness in their own chest. They hear calm authority in their voice. This isn't daydreaming, it's neuroscience. When you vividly imagine yourself performing well, your brain builds neural pathways that closely mirror actual experience. Professional athletes have used this for decades because imagined practice creates real neurological changes. Your brain, in many ways, treats a vivid mental rehearsal like a real event that already happened successfully. But visualization alone won't carry you. You also need to challenge the core beliefs generating those anxious thoughts. Most communication anxiety comes down to 3 fundamental fears: fear of being judged, fear of being rejected, fear of not being enough. These fears turn every conversation into an audition with only 2 outcomes: pass or fail. And when life feels like one endless tryout, of course you're going to be anxious. Anyone would be. Confident communicators have broken free from this trap by shifting to what I'd call a contribution mindset. They don't enter rooms thinking, "I hope they approve of me." They enter thinking, "I hope I can add something valuable here." They trust that their perspective matters. They know their preparation has worth. And this isn't ego. This is honest self-respect grounded in real effort. To build this mindset, your brain needs evidence. It's a skeptic, and it demands proof. So start collecting it. Keep a simple running list of moments when your communication created something positive. When someone said, "That question really made me think." When you saw understanding click in someone's eyes because of how you explained something. When your input shifted a conversation in a useful direction. Your brain has been building a case against you for years. It's time to build the case for you. Here's another technique that sounds deceptively simple, but is backed by solid research. When nerves hit before speaking, instead of telling yourself, "I'm